Hello and welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast. This show exists to uncover the stories and tactics from the world's most interesting veterans at the top of their craft. This show will make you more informed about unique industries and careers, get you asking questions that challenge you personally and professionally, and give you specific steps on becoming more lethal in your life and business. I'm your host, Brock Briggs, and today I'm speaking with Greg Fischer. Greg Fischer is a former Marine Corps infantryman and currently running Pit BBQ, a sauces and rub business that started from a recipe blog. Expect to learn how to instill an ownership mentality in your employees when starting a business. We talk about the cohort of men in the world today putting their job ahead of their family. Greg found himself drowning in a never-ending slew of emails and communication, even outside of working hours, which was the fuel for him to burn the boats and start a business. We also hear about his strategy on consumer packaged goods, how his distribution strategy mirrors strategies he learned in combat overseas, why discounting products for deals like Prime Day don't work, and why influencers tend to be overrated in the CPG space. You can find this episode as well as all video versions, transcripts, and other written content to keep learning at scuttlebuttpodcast.co. Please enjoy this episode with Greg Fischer.
Yeah, so Brock, I appreciate you having me on. Today is a Thursday, so we're recording this on a Thursday, and it's a heavy kind of meeting and content day for me. For my business, Pit BBQ, we send out a weekly newsletter to our people that subscribe to our newsletter. So it contains updates on the business. And then also we like to release like a weekly recipe that people can try. And then also our podcast gets our weekly podcast that gets released on this day. So today is a heavy day of just releasing content to our audience and then just fielding questions and feedback on that. So that's been on my mind today before I jumped on this call. And then afterwards, we're in a heavy grilling and barbecue season during the summer here. So we've got events coming up this weekend that we're planning inventory for and just getting our minds ready for being out there in person and talking with people about our products, as well as barbecuing and grilling. We got a lot of that stuff going on this summer. And today I'm getting prepped up for that kind of stuff.
We're going to get into the origins of Pit BBQ here in just a little bit. As the business has developed, how do you think about the time distribution of how much time you spent, like maybe in the beginning on content versus now content versus working on the product side? Because I'm guessing that's probably still a big part of the business.
As it is with a small business, like we bootstrapped it. So me and my business partner, we started with just our savings and all that kind of stuff. So we had to find ways to get organic traffic to what we were doing. So it was a lot of times just him and me creating content in the backyard. When we go to events, we do a lot of filming and photography of people using our products, trying our products. So using a lot of that stuff that we do ourselves. It's a heavy focus. And when we talk about product development and just overall business development, we have to also then put on our CEO hats and go out and do business marketing, relationship marketing, going out and talking with other businesses, business owners as we continue to build out the brand, because we know that without strategic partnerships, we're not going to have much of a brand to go off of. There is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes on developing content and then also developing relationships so we can continue to build out our business and our brand.
One of the big trends that I am really dialed into right now, and I think that it applies to a lot of people in the content space, is this content to commerce idea. People that are creating videos, oftentimes starting out just for fun, writing blogs, doing all of these things in the media space, and then finding business. And because the content in and of itself is usually not the product. Usually you're not going to make a ton of money off of a blog. Maybe you get some affiliate deals or something like that. But the real optionality lies in creating a product because your customers have this sort of affinity for you that's developed through your content over time. Was creating rubs and related barbecue products part of the original intent with this, or was this just something that you guys were starting out doing for fun?
Yeah, that's a great point. So really our journey started just as you explained it. We started a website and a blog during the pandemic around June, July of 2020. We saw a lot more people were barbecuing and grilling from home because they couldn't go out to their favorite restaurants anymore. So we like, this is an opportunity. Me and my business partner, Ben, we've been grilling and barbecuing in the backyard for over a decade. And we're like, we could probably help some people out. So we started as a blog. We shared recipes and tips and focused on grilling and barbecuing. And then naturally, we developed some rubs and sauces to help people cook good meals. Because, like us, we consume barbecuing and food as well. And what we were seeing in the marketplace as far as all natural, healthier products to put on our food was lacking. There's a lot of products out there that had a lot of artificial ingredients, that had a lot of fillers and additives. So we sought out to provide a product that was all natural, that didn't have all that stuff in it. So we could feel proud to not only share recipes and tips, but then also wholesome products that these people could cook with to share with their families as well.
Were these products that you were making already for yourself?
Yeah, so we started again like a while back developing stuff that we would give away to family members for free at like holidays. So like Christmas gifts, parties, we would bottle it ourselves and just give it away for fun. Well, we got a lot of great feedback on that saying this stuff is really good, or hey, I'm out. Can you refill it for me? So that's the slow progression of where we are today, was a lot of just us doing things that we enjoy doing, but then finding out that there's a market for it as well. So that kind of helped us give us a lot of confidence going into this thing, knowing that worst case scenario, we have good products that we can still give away for family and friends. Best case scenario is that we can actually make a living off of this.
Those homemade gifts around the holidays are always a killer thing, either
Mhm.
vegetables from the garden, if you're into canning, obviously
Yeah.
the grilling space is big and not difficult to create something that maybe is a little bit more meaningful. And I think that the content marketing that you guys are using gives that homegrown feel and establishes that relationship. I think that it would be we're going to get a little into the business a little further in a little bit. I'd love if you take 2 to 3 minutes, give me a high level overview of what lands you starting a barbecue company in the first place.
Sure. It actually starts back probably in 2002. I was a senior in high school. 9/11 happened. I decided to go into the Marine Corps after that. So I spent 4 years in the Marines. And a lot of you'll see from our business, Pit BBQ, and all the names to our products have a military term to it. So that had a huge influence on me. And when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2006, I came back home here to Wisconsin and I started going to school. I got my degree and then I started working in the corporate world. I was doing things I thought I should be doing, going down the path that provides stability and a sense of status as well. But then 10 years later, I was still with the same organization, but I was really unhappy. I was becoming a person that I thought I should be and not a person that of who I was. The pandemic hit and a lot of people took that time to reevaluate what they were doing with their life. I was one of them. And I decided then that I was going to pursue this passion that I had of barbecuing and grilling, and I launched Pit BBQ in August and July of 2020, and we've been going ever since.
Take me back to joining the Marine Corps and during that time, and then compare yourself to today. What is the biggest thing that you think
Mm.
differently about, or how you approach your life differently from then
Yeah.
into now?
I think it's a huge difference. There's a lot of things that I learned in the Marine Corps that have served me well throughout my time, not only in the Marine Corps, but in corporate life. And then now to what I'm doing now in entrepreneurship. But I say the biggest difference was I was solely focused on small goals at the time I got out of the Marine Corps. I knew I wanted to go to school. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I didn't give myself the opportunity to really take a step back and say, okay, what really makes me happy? And what's something that I would like to try out and challenge myself to try differently? Because I'd always been good at the business side of things, the finance side of things. So it just felt natural that I go down that path. And having that Marine military mentality was okay, this is the path I'm going down. Let's go. But I didn't really take time to step back and really take a look at the big picture. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm taking a step away from the day to day and I'm looking at the path that I want to go down and then finding ways to do that as opposed to picking the path that I know I'm good at and just going and plowing through it, which at the end of the day was what I did and is where I felt I was the most unhappy. So now I'm pivoting and able to take a lot of what I've learned, but then also taking a step back and looking at the higher level view of where I want my life to go. So those are the biggest differences is that there's a lot more strategy and a lot more thought that goes into my decisions now, as opposed to when I was just getting out of the military and looking to make a name for myself and provide for my family.
In your jobs prior to starting Burn Pit, it seems to me that you were able to use that sort of like business finance acumen, we'll call it, or skill or desire, also something that you can use pursuing the entrepreneurship route. What is the difference between those? Like, why are those fundamentally different to you?
I would say entrepreneurship, there's a lot more that goes into it because it's all on you. Now, going down the business and finance route for somebody else and working for a large organization, you're just a cog in this big wheel of industries. There's a lot more opportunity there for you to blend in and not stand out and just go about your day to day, which is great for some people. And for me, that's what I wanted to do for a long time, was just put my head down and work. But then I found out that I really have passions and ideas and thoughts that I want to share. And I didn't feel comfortable doing it in that environment. So now being in an entrepreneur role, I feel like a lot of those intangibles that I had before, I'm able to use a lot more differently now, like creating that content, building out a brand, developing relationships for my own business, as opposed to just developing them for the role that I was in. So there's a lot of similarities, but then there's a lot of differences that you can use those characteristics and those traits that served you well in one area to do a lot of different things in another area.
A past guest of mine that I had on the show, his name's Josh Steinman. He said something that has really stuck with me about entrepreneurship and how it differs than the traditional corporate route. He said, in any job, you are ultimately not actually responsible for anything. Like, the outcome is not on you. You can be in charge of something, but very rarely will you be directly tied to an outcome at a traditional job.
Mm.
And I think for military people specifically, when the story of that is the responsibilities baked into your job are a little bit different. I think that we crave that in some we want to be responsible for an outcome. Would you agree?
I would agree. I'd probably push back on that statement just a little bit, because once you start getting higher up into some of these organizations, you are directly responsible for the outcome of your teams and the what you're responsible for doing, and that's part of your performance evaluations, and your bonuses are tied to that. The higher you get in certain organizations, your results are directly tied to you. I just push back on that a little bit. I get, if you're an individual contributor, yes, that's, you're part of a team, a larger organization, and maybe not so much the individual contributor is, the results are tied to the overall organization. But as you get higher up, you are. And then but yeah, I would definitely agree. There's a level of ownership that we like to have as a military or former military member, is that we chose to go down that path that very few go down. And that's why I think veterans are more apt to take risks and be entrepreneurs, start businesses, and try different things that maybe the general population might not do, because we're just wired a little bit differently, and we're not afraid to take ownership of something, make a decision, act, and then regroup and go on to the next ones. I would definitely agree there that there's a lot of things that military members have that will tend to lead them towards more, maybe a more entrepreneurial route.
When you think about building the culture of Burn Pit, is there anything that sticks out to you about the corporate life or corporate jobs that you said that this will not be a part of what this company stands for? Anything
Mhm.
that says this isn't how we're going to operate? Because eventually, I'm going to tie back into what you're saying about at a certain threshold of like skill or title, you are going to start to be more responsible. Yes. Then let's take that to entrepreneurship. How do you make people responsible in a smaller organization then? Because I think that responsibility, it does drive performance.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, obviously, we're a very small business. I was working for an organization that had thousands of people working for them. Now they go from thousands to two or three. The biggest thing is autonomy. One thing that I know a lot of larger organizations, they don't allow the frontline workers to make decisions on the fly. So that creates bottlenecks and slowdowns, which ultimately a lot of times leaves the end user or the client unhappy. So here, with me and my business partner, and then any other consultants we bring on, it's important that they understand the high level vision of where we want to go with this business, who we serve. But then at the end of the day, if you're interacting with a client or somebody one on one and you have to make a decision that's going to serve the client the best, make that decision. Don't wait and don't ask for feedback or don't wait to get somebody's permission. Do what you think is going to be the best in that moment and act on it. And then we can regroup later on if we don't think it's the best decision and just kind of learn from it. But that's the biggest thing that we want to take and maybe change a little bit, is that giving people autonomy and the opportunity to make decisions that will enhance the customer or client experience is one thing that we pride ourselves on, that maybe larger organizations don't really take the time to educate people on or give the authority or permission for their frontline employees to do that.
One of the things that you talked with me about prior to this conversation is you referenced the pain of working in the corporate world. Is that what you're talking about? The lack of autonomy, maybe?
I'd say that's part of it, but then you lose your sense of identity when you are working, at least in my opinion. I know there's a lot of folks that love that environment and thrive in that environment. And I'd say I like that environment too, to a point, but then you start to get lost. You feel like a ghost. You feel like you can't share your opinions and your thoughts because of the way that you might be perceived by upper management or people above you or even your peers. There's a lot of, I would say, self-regulation that goes into that. And at the end of the day, we're all social beings. And if you have to hide a part of you every day you go into work, it could be a miserable experience.
One of the things that you had written that gave me a little bit of a laugh, but is right in that vein. You said, I wasn't designed in the likeness of God to sit behind a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah. So it's, I'm glad you found some humor in that. Yeah. And that goes to a serious situation too, is for me and maybe some others that are very spiritual, that believe in God, that think that if you believe in the Bible and you read the Bible, we are made in the image and likeness of God. If you are very unhappy with what you are doing, I would just say, I would question you and I would ask you, do you think you were put on this earth by God to do what you're doing right now? And most of the times I could probably guess the answer is no. And then I would just say, okay, what could you do differently today that might lead you down that path? So yeah, I try and share that stuff because one thing I've learned that going through this journey myself is the more I share about what I'm going through, there's 10, 20, 30 other men that are going through something similar. And they always reach out to me and say, thank you for posting that. I appreciate that. Or, yeah, I'm inspired by your journey and I'm looking to do something similar. So that's why I share. That's why I'm an open book when it comes to my journey here. And I appreciate you reading that and asking me about it.
Yeah, I got a laugh out of it, but not in a way that was a critical laugh. It was,
Right.
I
Yeah.
just, it resonated with me, is really what it
Yeah.
was. I appreciate how open you are about your journey because I think that spurns other people to action when they
Mm.
see that it's attainable. You said that's one of the questions that you ask a lot of people who are maybe that you meet or in conversation. That's also something I really enjoy to talk to people about when you meet them. What is the one thing for you? What is the most common answer that you hear people say as to why that they're not pursuing that thing?
Fear. A lot of it I do just because of who I was and where I was in the corporate world. My message tends to lean heavily towards the mid to higher level executives that work for large organizations who happen to be male. So the biggest thing is fear of, they are this, a lot of them are the sole providers for their families. They all the benefits, they have families, the healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, all these things go through them. So if they were to leave their jobs and pursue something, all of those things would be lost as well. And they would have to pick up the pieces or find alternative ways to make sure their family is provided for. When you get to a certain level, it's very hard to leave that environment. So it's almost like a golden handcuff. You're miserable because you're made for something different, but then you have it you have it really good because of the pay and the benefits and even the status of who you are and what you do. That's hard to walk away from. So that's probably the number one reason why most people won't pursue their passions or go down that route, because of status and comfortability.
Certainly in those situations, it is there's a lot at stake. As you mentioned, they're providing for their family. It's not easy to just, maybe you're accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Maybe you got fancy house and a boat and all of these things that you got to pay for. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, why don't you do this? But put in the positioning of what is more important, that 401k match and that car stipend, or
Mm,
doing something that you actually care about. It's almost,
mm,
the conversation just turns silly because
mm.
I don't think that anybody would disagree with it, but it still continues to shock me how, even just with little actions, how that can't be pursued even in
Mhm.
your off time.
Yeah. And I remember one conversation I had with a gentleman, and he was doing well enough where he could actually step away probably from what he was doing. But it was a lot of those fears. And he said to me, he said, I will keep doing what I'm doing so I can provide for my family. And he had two, I think, two daughters that were getting ready to go to school, like college. And he's said, that's all paid for already. All this, I could step away and not have to worry about money. But it was just this sense of pride where he would continue to sacrifice himself, his mental health, his physical health. Because prior to him talking to me, he had to go on disability because he essentially had a mental breakdown. I was like, would your daughters rather have this level of lifestyle, or would they rather have their dad? And obviously the answer is they'd rather have their dad above all else. I'm happy to say that a few months later, he reached out to me and said he put in his retirement package or whatever. And now he's doing something he enjoys doing. But I have a lot of those conversations with men that are just not willing, or just not at that moment where they're willing to take a step back and look at what they're doing to their own lives, their health, in the notion that they're sacrificing their self for their family. And ultimately, I think that's what put us in this position. And a lot of men die early because they are sacrificing so much, including their health, just to provide. I've had a lot of those conversations, and I'm happy to see some people starting to turn around, but I'd love to have more of them.
Obviously, the jump to entrepreneurship is a big one, and a lot of people are not going to be ready to make that leap right away. What are like the small little things that can be done daily, weekly, whatever the cadence is,
Mhm.
that gets people moving in the right direction?
I think the biggest thing is finances. A lot of times people are stuck in jobs they don't like because they overextend themselves with personal finances, taking on a lot of debt. So the biggest thing that anybody could do if they're looking to move down this path is to cut a lot of that stuff out. Start setting savings plans for yourself, start developing a plan to pay down debt if you have a lot of debt, because ultimately that's what keeps a lot of people in the position that they're in, is they feel like they can't ever get out of that hole. So one is don't get in that hole in the first place. But number two, if you are, start making decisions to get out of it. So that's something people can do while they are working. And then two is having a long-term vision, having a plan in place of saying by this time, I'd like to have this accomplished, and take little steps to get there. If they have an idea or a passion that they think they might be able to turn into a business idea, is well, one, you have to vet that idea. So start going out and getting prototypes, or start asking people for feedback, and then go on from there. So those would be like the couple of things that I would say that you can do while you are working is one, pay down any debt and start saving a lot as much as possible, because there could come a time where you could use that money to seed your own business. But it also gives you a lot of flexibility to say, I'm not happy here, but I have this cushion. I can go move on to do something else, whether that's a new job, new position, or just start your own business.
That financial flexibility gives you so much leeway, and there's a lot that can go wrong, and you're still going to be okay. Gives you
Mhm.
lots of shots on goal when you don't have massive bills and debt payments to make. One of the things that you were continuing to highlight in this kind of first part of the conversation about your corporate job and what brings you to today is the role that you have as the leader of a house or as a man. How do you think that your views of what being a man means have changed since maybe you joined the Marine Corps?
Obviously, I have three sons in my household that look up to me, and I couldn't look at them every day going to a job I was miserable at, telling them that they could be and do anything that they wanted to do, knowing that I was living a lie myself. So regardless of the outcome of this business, I knew I had to take a shot and I had to go after it. And I had to show them that they could do whatever they thought and create in their mind. So that's what that was important to me. And being a man is leading by example, and not just the do as I say, not as I do. So that's what it means to me, being a leader, making decisions, taking action, but they're also still providing for my family so that they never go without at the level that we were accustomed to. That's just part of what I think being a man is, showing up, leading, and then also letting them also kind of learn by failure too, because I think that's some of the most important lessons we learn are by trying and doing and failing. That if we never give our kids, if we never have the opportunity to do that, then we just stay in this continual state of non-growth and we never get better. So those are just some of the things I think in the Marine Corps and the military helped shape a lot of that, of leading by example, trying new things and failing, but then getting back up and doing it again. So that continues to carry with me throughout the rest of my life.
How do you think that your view of what being a man means compares to maybe what is looked at as what the a man ought to be in like today's society or culture? Will add that overlay on just to maybe you can, if you want to reference things that you maybe see in the media or what you
Mm.
see online, I'm sure you've got some idea about what is accepted today. Do you think that your beliefs about that differ than what's pushed today?
I'd say yes and no. I'd say a lot of what I think of as a male's role in society is you could be considered traditional. I do think that the man of the house leads the family, but then also that doesn't mean that the wife and the spouse doesn't have control and doesn't make decisions as well. It's just from what I've seen in society today, at least in American culture or Western society, is that it's almost as equal footing. So then that's fine, but just not how I choose to approach things in my life, especially since I'm raising three young boys. It's important for me to show them that they are the providers, they're the protectors, and no matter what relationship they're in, no matter where they're at with or who they're at, whether that be with their friends or whether that be with a significant other, they need to step up. They need to lead by example. And then I think that's American culture kind of tends to shy away from that a little bit right now, where we are looking for kind of more of that equality amongst individuals, which is great and fine. But I also still believe that it's a man's job to provide and protect for his family.
I agree. I absolutely agree. How do you we made a biblical reference earlier, so I'm going to get biblical here for a
Sure.
second if you're game for that.
Let's
One of
go.
the things, yeah, let's do it. Particular, I couldn't even reference it, but there is a verse that's called about husbands serving your wives. What do you think, or how do you think that we as men ought to be a leader and be the provider and look out for the household while
Mhm.
also doing that? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think it gets misconstrued a lot of times. But my job is to serve my wife, just like I feel it's her job to serve me. I mean, we do that in different capacities and we're different people and we both have different strengths. So my wife has goals and ambitions and things that she wants to accomplish too in both personal and professional world. So my job is to be her supporter, to lift her up, to talk well about her, to give her ideas and thoughts so she can continue to pursue those things, because the more that she is achieving the goals that she sets out for herself, it just brings it back to the whole family dynamic of leading by example when she's pursuing her own goals. And my job there is to lift her up and never talk bad about her to people outside of this house. I think that's one thing that I think a lot of relationships lack is just that sense of trust and I guess loyalty. I feel wholeheartedly that, and even with my kids, I tell them all the time, don't talk bad about the family when you're outside this household because you never know what's going to happen. So that's how I feel. My job is to lift them all up so they can be successful in their own rights, but then also do my own thing and lead by example that way too. So I'll continue to serve my wife and help her in any ways that I can so she can pursue and achieve the goals that she has as well.
Just as an aside, do you have any tips, tricks, anything real quick that like you and your wife do that are just like a marriage of advice that you'd maybe pass along that has helped you build a successful marriage?
Open and honest communication is number one. We went just like every marriage and every relationship, we've gone through rough patches and things. Recently, we've made a commitment this year to date each other one time a week. Well, we always have a date night or a day date or something like that. So once a week, where we go get coffee or we simply just go for a walk together without the kids, where we can talk and chat about our lives outside of just being parents. She can share with me what she's pursuing. I can share with her what I'm pursuing so we can be on the same page. So we actually developed relationship cards that we carry with us that have our top 4 goals as a couple. So we can continue to refer back to that to make sure that we're aligned all the time throughout the year about where we want our relationship to go this year. So those are just some things we've done that have really helped continue to solidify our relationship and even make it better. Because prior to this year, we probably had let it maybe suffer for the lack of providing for our kids and raising a family, where we were finally being more intentional about our relationship. So I think a lot of people could probably do that.
Walk me through this cards thing. I got to hear more about this. Explain this to me.
Yeah, essentially it's just like a 3x5 index card where prior to this, we did some worksheets together. I found where it's just what's working in a relationship, what's not working in relationships, what are some of your top goals for the relationship this year. So she did it, I did it, and then we came together and we put them together and we looked for alignment on what things that we wanted to work on. And we came up with 4 that we wanted to work on for our relationship for this upcoming year. So we just printed that out, and she carries a card, I carry a card. We refer back to it all the time just to make sure that we are staying truthful to what we both agreed to at the beginning of the year. So that's basically it. It's pretty simple. And this was all stuff that we chose to do. We weren't going to help somewhere else. This was just something that her and I had talked about and decided to go in and do it. Like I said, the biggest thing is on there is that we have a commitment to find personal time 1 time a week to go on a date. And we've been doing that since I think January.
That's fantastic. And I love the mutually agreed upon thing. And I
Mhm.
feel like creating a goal together, then you're both on the hook for making it happen. And if you
Mhm.
can be transparent about maybe I wasn't as good on number 2 this week, whatever that goal is, and being able to
Mhm.
that open and honest communication and hold each other accountable on your date or wherever else throughout the week. That's fantastic. Good for you. I like that.
Thank you.
You made a LinkedIn post a while back that was talking about the 4 steps that you took to
Mm.
basically get the business going. One of those was getting your spouse on board. What was
Mhm.
your wife's reaction going through the process of saying, "Hey, I want to quit this.
Mhm.
You've got this fancy title in the corporate world and probably providing for your family in more monetarily maybe than you ever had, and you want to
Mhm.
stop to go start a business." What did she say to that?
I remember the conversation pretty vividly still. We had just gotten back from a vacation and I couldn't unplug. It was this constant emails, texts, and this need to be on to firefight and things like that with the job. And I was just laying on my couch and I was looking up at the ceiling. I was on the verge of tears. I just said, I can't do this anymore. And the irony of that was a few years earlier, my wife came to me with the same thing where she was unhappy with what she was doing. And my words to her were, just quit. We'll figure it out. So a few years later, when we're having this conversation, he says, "Well, just quit. We'll figure it out." So that gave me the confidence to know that okay, she's on board with this decision, and I felt a lot better than doing that. And that's again one of the things that people say to me all the time too is my wife would never let me. My wife wouldn't let me do that, or my wife is a lot more risk averse than I am. So there's a lot of fear that goes into that conversation with the spouse, but at least having that conversation, you get on the same page to know that where one person's at, where another person's at, and then maybe you can come to some middle ground. But for me, it was at a low point where I was just miserable, unhappy, and my health was suffering. So I had to make a choice. And those conversations aren't always easy because, especially with the spouse that you, like I just said, you're supposed to provide and protect. Now you're becoming vulnerable and showing that maybe you do have a little bit of weakness in you. And that's an ego thing that a lot of men have is not showing weakness. So it took a lot of courage, at least on my part, to be able to at least say those words like I'm miserable, I'm happy, I can't do this anymore. I remember that conversation just like it was yesterday. But like I said, I'm glad I've had conversations with my spouse in the past about that type of stuff. So I felt a little more comfortable going to her with that.
Let's get into these other couple items on these 4 stages of prep. It's good that she was on board, and it sounds like she have maybe pushed you over on that, and that's in the same way that you did that for her. So you had
Yeah.
that one was in the bag from the beginning on starting this. You already touched on saving and the importance of kind of finance. Let's talk about these other 2, vision and then managing healthcare.
Yeah. I think vision kind of speaks for itself. When a lot of times when people are working for somebody else, they often have visions of what else they want to do. They want to be a musician or they want to start this business. They already have those visions planted in their minds. And that's why they're so unhappy, right? They have this want and this need inside of them that they're not fulfilling because they're working for somebody else. And that's where I was. I had this vision in my mind of starting my own business, starting a brand. So I had to make that vision a reality by putting it on paper. I'm a big proponent of vision boards and writing out your vision because it brings it to life. You have something tangible to look at. That's one of the things I did is I created a vision for myself, a vision board of family, finance, health, and then spiritual religion. So I started putting pictures and words and things that I wanted to feel like on those boards, and they started to come to life for me. That's the biggest step. Is you can't take a step towards a goal if you don't have a big vision in mind. That was like the biggest thing for me is I knew what I wanted to do. It's on paper. I see it every day. And now I'm going to take little steps each day to get to that. The little steps for me were paying down debt and saving up and then having conversations with people that were that I had a lot of respect for, not just my spouse, but my family and my friends that were close to me, creating this vision. And then the last piece there, I think it was the benefits in the healthcare, right? Yeah.
How much did you have to save to get this off the ground and feel comfortable, or maybe not fully comfortable, but at
Yeah.
least that you had some personal runway to get this going?
Yeah. So I probably took a leap maybe a little sooner than most might feel comfortable with. For me, this was an all-in type of situation for me. Burn the boats. I could no longer just do this half in, half out, or build it on the side. That just wasn't where I was at mentally. It was like, I'm so miserable here. I have to do something else. So that's why I went all in on it. And just good financial planning in the past, saving 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in case that emergency comes up. A lot of people think emergency as the fridge breaks down or you have to get a new car. For me, my emergency was like I was at a mental health kind of crossroads. So I chose to use those funds to take myself out of where I was to pursue this passion. So everybody's different. I'm not telling people what to do. You have to take care of your family, you have to pay for your lifestyle, but at the same time, there's some risk that goes into pursuing a passion or doing what you want to do. So everybody's a little different and they have to make that choice for themselves.
You mentioned the burn the boats strategy, and you had told me prior to this conversation that side gigs don't work. Why not?
They didn't work for me, I should say, just because of maybe my mentality of always having something to fall back on. So I had done things in the past where I'd started businesses and tried to do it on the side or at night after my regular job was done, and nothing ever stuck. And I came to a point in the conclusion where I was just like, I need to cut everything out except for going down this one path. So that's where I was, and that's where I decided to burn the boats and not have this safety net to fall back on if this doesn't pan out. Like this was like an all-in moment where I need to go all in on this idea and this thought where I knew for myself that I would never fully pursue this passion. I would continue to be miserable if I only dip my toe in the water. But I know a lot of successful people that build something on the side and then once it's ready to replace their income, they launch into it. But that just wasn't for me.
Did burning the boats come back to that vision board? I'm imagining that if you all of a sudden are having all of this free time, you're 40 to 60 hours a week back from your work, you probably need to have a very clear vision of the steps that you need to take to actually immediately start working on something. All of a sudden, your clock is starting realistic
Hmm.
and of if you don't start generating money in the next, I don't know, however much runway you were thinking of, but maybe we'll call it 12 months, then this
Hmm.
is not going to work. What were those first things that you began working on? And maybe give me a high level overview of, hey, these are the milestones that we were looking to achieve to get us on the way.
Yeah, yeah. So for us, because I did have some experience building other businesses in the past, it was a very short runway for me to actually get a website up and running, and then also then developing products and things that we thought. So, like I mentioned earlier on, We started as a website, a blog where we were just sharing recipes and tips. So then we had to decide, okay, how are we going to make money off of this? And you're right, you could do affiliates, you could do reviews and all this kind of other stuff. But for us, we wanted to actually have a physical brand product. So we had already knew we could make rubs and sauces. And honestly, that's a very low barrier to entry to get into that game because they're a dime a dozen. So we're like, let's throw our hat in this ring and see what happens. And then we started seeing some success and we just snowballed it from there. We started off with a few products, we tested it out, and we got good reviews, and then we launched into a few more, and then a few more eventually started the sauces, hot sauces, and then apparel. We continue to grow and build off of it, but it's just looking at what's the next natural step for us. And for us, it was a rub and sauce game. And then we have some ideas going forward here that will probably change a little bit. But as much as I've been in the business world, I've got my master's degree in business and administration. I know finances. I know how to write business plans. Nothing can compare you or prepare you to actually going and doing it. We've learned a lot of trial by error, trial by fire. So you'll take one little step and then something will happen and you're like, oh, maybe we should go down this route. So that happens all the time. So being able to pivot and change course is essential for small businesses.
I have struggled personally for a long time on overanalyzing and trying to collect all of the information prior to taking a step towards doing something. And it's interesting because it's when you're creating a new path, the path reveals itself over time. If you
Yeah.
want to do something that, not that nobody has ever done before, but new to you, certainly you
Mhm.
have to get moving and then orient yourself and take another step and reorient. And the important step there is just that you do something and then
Mhm.
can measure the feedback of that thing that you just did and see exactly how that influences what you should do next.
Yeah, that's totally right. We had this big grand vision business plan that we put together. We start down this path, and then one opportunity comes up and you pursue it, and it puts you down a completely different path. It doesn't take you completely off of where your vision was, but it changes course just slightly because you see a different opportunity for you to move a little quicker, maybe, or pursue an avenue that you weren't even thinking about that might be a good spot for you. Like I said, like you can't find those opportunities or at least try them out until you actually take one step. So for us, we started out, we wanted to be a fully e-commerce online seller rubs and sauces all over the world. We got invited to one craft fair. We're like, okay, let's try this out. We made more money in one day there than we did online in the previous week. So we're like, okay, maybe we should do more of these. It's just those ideas, those thoughts, those opportunities that come your way, but they only come your way if you take one step and you let people know what you're doing because then opportunities will find you.
How do you evaluate those new opportunities? At the beginning, you've got a million options to choose from, and it doesn't really probably matter which way you go. You just need to do
Mhm.
something. But as you get further down, more opportunities start to come up. And then it
Mhm.
becomes about saying no more. The focus becomes more important. How do you think about evaluating new opportunities that come through your door today as opposed to day one?
Yeah. So it goes back to communication with my business partner, having an overall vision for where we want to take the brand. We get hit up every day with requests for certain things to go down this route, to go put your products on this platform. At the end of the day, it comes back to the three main goals or objectives that me and my business partner agreed to when we started the business. Does this opportunity lead us down towards that goal or does it lead us away from it? If it's away from it, it's a hard no. If it leads us towards it, we'll look at it a little bit more. Starting off, you're excited, you have a lot of trust in other people, and you want to just get out the gates running. So maybe you take a little bit more risks doing things that a few years later you're probably saying no to. So it's all about, again, finding out what works for you, what doesn't, but then also having experience to know if this opportunity that you presented with is really going to pay off for you, or if it's probably a nice to have and not a need to have.
What is that? You've referenced your vision a couple times. What is that vision, if you can share? And then maybe what are some of the things that you're doing now that are working you towards that?
Mhm. Yeah, so first starting out, we knew being a small business, Even though we want to eventually be like a nationwide brand, we wanted to dominate our home state of Wisconsin. So we want to dominate our backyard. So that means investing heavily in just here in our home state. So it means that we turn down a lot of opportunities outside of Wisconsin to go to events, to be in stores, because we have a limited capacity. We have a limited ability to reach those types of retailers. So we wanted to get really good at being the premier brand here in Wisconsin before we started to then strategically look outside the state. So that's number one. Number two is aligning ourselves with those that are pro military, pro patriotic, that support causes like we do. So we support a lot of veteran organizations, nonprofits. So that was number two, moving down that way. And then from a national perspective, as we roll out nationally, we look to target those military towns that have a lot of military members, that have a lot of veterans, like the San Diegos, the San Antonios, and some of these other places, Colorado Springs. So that's how we are focused and what we're doing to make sure we stay on track. Now, there's opportunities that came our way that we pursued that we probably wouldn't pursue again. But then we know that we learned from it and we're able to say the next time that's probably not a good idea.
I think that those are interesting goals because they're certainly not what I was expecting you to say, but different than a lot of the strategies that I hear when people talk about. It's more about, oh, I want to be on this platform or I want to be on that platform rather
Mhm.
than like location or demographic base. And I think that probably is unique to you guys and probably even better strategy because you've got such strong affinity from either one specific place or a group of people who will
Mhm.
then look for that other places. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so we actually took this out of the playbook of when I was in the Marine Corps, and I made multiple combat deployments. And one of our strategies was to really get in with the towns. So on previously, in my first and second deployments, we were on large bases on the outside of town. We would sit in large bases and we would just go in and patrol these towns every now and again. The strategy changed my third deployment where we were actually embedded inside of the towns to create better relationships and get to know the people. So I took that and I mirrored that to my business. So I want to know our backyard, home state of Wisconsin. I want to dominate the home state of Wisconsin. And then I want to strategize and I want to go into strategic locations throughout the US to again dominate that area, know it really well, and then we can spread from there. So that's how we chose to go down that path. So again, a lot of the military experience is coming back into the business.
Yeah, big time. I really enjoy that, and I like that analogy. I think it makes when you explain it that way, it makes a lot more sense than just really going with a wide net. That
Mm,
brings up another post that you had made on LinkedIn talking about why you guys don't do Prime Day deals, which
mm,
is probably a controversial thing to say for a CPG company.
mm.
Why is it that you don't do them?
So again, that was one of the things we learned early on. So we've been on Amazon for almost 2 years now. And that's one way we get our brand out nationally. We invested into that platform to put our brand out there. And in the past, we have done Prime Day deals. Now, for a rub and sauce company, margins are very low already. And we have Amazon fulfill our products. So if you are a Prime member or you buy on Amazon, Amazon has our products and they ship it to you. So it doesn't come from us, it comes from Amazon because we ship our products to Amazon. They take a fee for that already. So now when we are doing deals or coupons on Amazon, that cuts even further into our margins of what we can recoup. Now you can say that's good or bad because you're getting your product in front of more people. But when we did that in the past, when we did those deals and those discounts, we found one thing was that people that do those deals and buy on those deals, they're only looking for the deal. They're not looking for the brand. They're not looking for the product specifically. So we saw a lot of returns. So products coming back. We saw that Amazon, because Amazon fulfills such a large number of orders during those days, that they weren't able to fulfill their promise of delivering within that 2-day window for prime shipping. So we would get a lot of people coming back with negative perceptions of our brand because they think we are the ones that are sending it, or they don't understand that Amazon is the one that's fulfilling it. Those are just a number of reasons, but the main reason is that When you do a deal or you do a deal on Amazon and you say, I want to give 10% off for Prime Day, when Prime Day comes around again, you can't do 10%. You have to go above that. So you have to go above 10%. Each time you do a deal, you have to give a bigger deal the next time. So eventually we would get to a point, if we were to continue to do that, where we would be essentially giving these things away for a loss, which isn't something that we're willing to do as a small business right now. So those are a number of the reasons why we don't do the Prime Day deals. Honestly, our sales on that platform have continued to maintain steady. We have a very low return rate now as opposed to when we do those deals. And we have a lot more, I would say, loyal customers on that base that tend to buy from us for who we are in the product and not just because of the deal.
I think it might be helpful as we talk into some of the more nitty gritty of the business. Maybe give me a sense of the scale of the business, how much you guys are doing in sales or units or whatever you can share that will give us a picture. And then, if you can, what is the margin differences of versus selling on a platform like Amazon versus like straight from your website?
Yeah. So we're just into year 3 here. We are a 6-figure business, so we do over 6 figures a year in sales, and we do sell over. If we do it down to a bottle, we do over 10,000 bottles, and that's between the rub, sauces, seasonings, and we are in about 60 different retail locations throughout the state of Wisconsin and northern Illinois. So we're starting to make a larger imprint here. So that's just some kind of background for where we are as a business. And we have aspirations, obviously, beyond that to continue to grow into a 7-figure business. So we'll get there one day, but just not yet. And as far as the margins, so Amazon, again, we chose to have them fulfill our products. So there's a storage fee, there's a fulfillment fee. We're looking at very slim margins for, let's say, a bottle of rub, like a barbecue rub. You're looking maybe 15, 20% on Amazon, for us at least, where we were to sell that same thing on our website, where we actually charge less because we don't have to incur those costs that Amazon has. We're looking at 40 to 50% margins overall. So that's the difference for us, at least. And we know that we have a very low margin item anyways because of Ross's sauces and rubs. But that's just a little perspective of Amazon's a great platform to get noticed and to utilize because they take a lot of the guesswork out of shipping and stuff. But at the same time, they do take their cut. And for a small business just starting out with low margins, it might not be the best platform for them.
That tees up my next question very nicely. Let's say
Yeah.
that you're talking to a just starting out CPG company. What is it that you're giving them in terms of advice? What are like the major, maybe it's about distribution as we're talking here, maybe it's about the content side of things as you guys grew off of that base. What are the maybe 2 or 3 most important lessons that you had learned if you were advising a up and
Mhm.
coming company?
Yeah, the biggest thing is share your story. Number one is let people into the background, get people eager and anxious to get your products if you have a product that you're going to be selling. Let them in on that process because you're going to create raving fans for you and people that are going to line up for you to buy your product when it's available. Don't be shy. Get out there, share your story, and share the behind the scenes of your business because you'll gain followers and fans just by doing that. And when you're ready to launch, you'll have people lined up for you. The second thing I would say is pick a platform and get really good at it. We chose to go down the route of having our own website on Shopify and then also a few half a year later to launch on Amazon. If I could go back and do it again, I'd probably pause on Amazon and wait a little bit longer till we had a little bit more capital saved up because we did invest quite a bit into getting that up and running through partnerships and hiring consultants and things like that. That would be my second one is if you're going to go all in on one of those platforms, pick one thing and get really good at it before you move on to the next one. And then the third thing is reviews. Get people your products. If you have to do it for free for a while, do it depending on what you're selling. For us, it's pretty easy to ship a bottle of rubber sauce to somebody and say, hey, give us your feedback on it. But find those people that can talk about it online and give you reviews for it right away. So you have some people again that are willing to show your products, and then by doing that, you'll have more people ready to go to buy from you when you are ready to launch your products.
How are you thinking about sourcing those reviews? I hadn't really considered that you might be sending them to somebody for free for the review, I guess my mind would have immediately gone to trying to send them to maybe an influencer, I guess, somebody who is like popular on TikTok or Instagram like that. I hadn't really thought about strictly the reviews process.
Mm.
Do you prefer the reviews versus going maybe for an influencer route?
Yeah, that's 100% the way I would go. Now, if you already have a friend that's an influencer or something like that, yeah, obviously let them help you if they are willing to do that. But just from our perspective, we've worked with some, I guess you could say, mid-level influencers. Very little rate of return on those, unless they are really bought into your product and they use it regularly. Now, if they're just a face to pitch it, it's probably not going to pan out for you like you think it is. The mid-level influencers that maybe have the 10,000 to 20,000 followers, those are probably ones I would target because they're probably more accessible and they probably aren't charging. A lot of those larger influencers charge money to if they're going to promote your products on their platforms. But no, I would give it to the biggest thing you can do is go out to Facebook groups, go out to Instagram of people that are already using maybe similar products and get them to try your product and give you feedback on it. And then if they like it, leave a review because that's what's ultimately going to be the people that are buying your stuff is people like that. That's the route I would go down if I were to start this business again and start from scratch. Just giving it to people that you know are going to use it and then ask them for feedback and then ask them for reviews. I would skip the influencers. Media is great as well for getting social proof and trust and credibility for some people. But again, we see very little rate of return from the media publications that we've been in, other than just being able to post it on our website and say, hey, look at what happened here. We were in this publication and they liked our sauce.
You were telling me about a story where you guys had a bunch of bottles broken as you were in the scale up process of trying to manage distribution. And I think that this tied into working with a 3PL. Can you recount that story
Mm.
and then maybe really highlight what the takeaway is for somebody who is in a similar position?
Yeah, so when we launched our first products, you can see above me here, those are some of the first ones we launched, and those are rubs and seasonings, and they come in plastic bottles, so it's easy to ship those wherever. In the beginning of 2021, we decided to launch sauces, which come in glass bottles. So we launched them. We had a huge launch. A lot of people ordered. So this is great. So we started sending them out. And we learned a lot in those few weeks after that because the United States Postal Office doesn't take as good care of our products as we do. So about half of those bottles that were going out across the country to different people broke in transit. So we had to scramble. It was one of those, okay, this is your make or break, right? This is, yeah, is this really how you're going to go down with a bunch of broken sauce bottles? We're like, nope. So we immediately repackaged them and shipped them again to those people that said, hey, our stuff was broken. But then we had to go back and try and reclaim or claim losses to the postal service, which didn't turn out too well for us. So we ended up eating a lot of those first orders of sauce because we didn't do our own due diligence in how to package them and send them. So I will say, if you are shipping products across the country, I would do some tests. I would have people you can send it to in other states and other areas of the country where to see how it arrives when it gets there. Because a lot of times, a lot of our packages, even though they're packaged, wrap them up real nice, bottles are broken, packages are destroyed. So I would just do a little bit of that research ahead of time to make sure that your products are going to get there safely, especially if you have a valuable or a fragile item like we did. That's probably what I would do differently if I had to go back in time is test them out a little bit more.
Any last bits of input or advice about somebody going down the path of starting their own business or any other lessons that have really stung you that you'd like to save another vet from?
Simplify, keep it simple. As you go down this route, everybody thinks just because you start a business, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of products, that you have a lot of resources available. You don't. I can tell you that. Unless you do, then great, do what you need to do. But if you're a small business just starting out, learn to say no real fast. It's not going to feel good right away, but you'll get used to it because at the end of the day, like you got to have a business to run. And the longer you can stay in the game, the better off you'll be. That's a mentality that we have. This is a long-term game. It's not to win the game, it's to stay in the game. And that's the mentality that we have with the decisions that we make. Hey, is this a decision that's going to help us stay in the game, or is this going to take us out of the game? That's the piece of advice I would give: is keep it simple, learn one or two platforms that you're and get really good at that, and learn to sell one or two things, get really good at that, and then move on to the next. So keep it simple, have a strategy, pursue that strategy, and learn to say no.
There's one last thing that I want to ask you about, and it's a post that you had made on LinkedIn that I think encapsulates a lot of what we've talked about today. You said the enemy is anything that takes you away from your purpose.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, like I said, just we get bogged down with a lot of distractions. And part of, at least in combat, the enemy is all about distracting you over here so they can take advantage of you over here. So in your own personal life, and maybe even in your business, whatever pursuit or passion or purpose that you have, anything that's going to take you off that track is going to take you away from that purpose. Distractions, anything other things that are going to lead you down a path that's not ultimately that's going to lead you to success or down your path for purpose, is something that you shouldn't be doing, and you should cut it out. That's where that post came from, because we are inundated with distractions. We carry around them in our pockets all day. Make sure you limit the distractions, because the enemy is looking to take you away from whatever you're pursuing.
Greg, I really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. What can myself or the audience do to be useful to you?
Well, just by helping share our story is very helpful for us. So this podcast, I appreciate you, Brock. But yeah, if they're interested in learning more about the business, you can go out to burnpitbbq.com to see our products and how we're set up. We're on Amazon as well. If you're looking to follow my personal journey and me sharing a lot of my insights and what I'm learning running the business, and just I also reflect a lot on what I was feeling when I was in the corporate world, you can find me on LinkedIn, just Greg Fischer, and looking forward to connect with people out there.
I'll include both those links in the show notes. Greg, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Your listenership helps me better educate people like you and the rest of our nation's military, both past and present, on building a successful life outside of military service. If you're looking for more ways the top vets are leading more effective lifestyles, building businesses, and using the resources designed specifically for you, press here for a selection of some of the best clips. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date, and I will be talking with you soon.